Welcome back. Guys, we're going to do something similar that we did last year that it seemed people liked. We're going to look back at 2023 and we're going to look ahead to 2024 with some important voices in the space. We have Mance Harmon. He is one of the co-founders of Hedera. He's one of the co-CEOs of Swirlds Labs. And then we also have the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, Shayne Higdon. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks, Brandon. It's great to be here.
Hi, Brandon. Same here. Agreed.
It's going to be a fun one. I'm going to ask you both this first one. What in the Hedera ecosystem are you most proud of over the past 12 months? Shayne, we'll start with you.
I'm proud that we continue to build. I think when I look at the bear market that occurred and for how long it's been, the fact that we continue to find incredible projects that we could spend time with that are materially changing the ecosystem around Hedera, that's been exciting to me. And, we want to continue to do that.
And Mance, what are you most proud of when you look past over the last year?
It's hard to say just one thing. There have been a lot of good variables this year. TPS growth, of course, has been fantastic. But one layer below, if you double click on the TPS growth, the diversification of revenue in that growth. When we look at the TPS itself, there's a long tail of projects, right? There are a few that really drive a majority of the TPS, but then there are a lot of projects under there that complete that tail of TPS demographic. And interestingly, those organizations are now driving more TPS than by themselves than 100% of the TPS 2 years ago, right? And so that is true growth. That's healthy. I'm very proud of the accomplishments there. And then I don't think we can go without calling out the community, and specifically we had the first Hedera organized conference this year. Elizabeth Chase, spearheaded all of that. Kudos to her. It was a great opportunity for the H-Barbarians and everyone in the community to get together for the first time. And we didn't have anything to do with that. We being, those that have been more directly involved in Hedera, this was a community-driven event, and that was noteworthy. I think that's worthy of being called out.
Absolutely. It was a fun event. And going back to the TPS, like we've talked about in the past, all those fees aren't the same. Every transaction is not created equal. We have the HCS transactions, and we have tons of those going through. That's the majority of the transactions. But we're seeing all kinds of stuff. The ones that are HTS transactions, token transactions, are worth 10 times as much. And then 500 times as much when you're talking about either a smart contract call or an account creation. And right now we're seeing a lot of account creation with teams like Karate Combat and so forth. All right, so Mance, I'm going to go to you with another question. Swirlds has been around for the better part of a decade. How do you shake things up and keep things fresh as a company? And just to give an example, the company that I was with before, we had a large fleet of ships, and the company didn't really want you to stay in the same position or on the same ship for more than 5 years. And I'm not specifically talking about personnel, though you can talk about that, but just in general, how do you keep it fresh at Swirlds?
Well, first, let me make a distinction between Swirlds and other parts of it. So I think it's important for people to understand that while we started everything in Swirlds, when we created Hedera, Swirlds was the first member organization of Hedera, but all the work shifted to Hedera. And then as Hedera matured, other organizations were created, including the HBAR Foundation and then Swirlds Labs. And from my perspective, the work that had been done in Hedera has now moved out to those organizations. And so in some real ways, we've been in a constant state of flux from the beginning. There's been no sort of standard or status quo. It's always been a process of change and change management. So, in some ways, I kind of look forward to the time when we're mature and all we have to do is, management 101 in terms of managing pipeline or cash flows and that sort of thing. We have not had that. So, first the private networks with Swirlds, then Hedera, and now Swirlds Labs. There's never a dull moment let me stop there.
No, that makes sense. So, Mance, I'm going to go to you again. I request questions from the community on a regular basis, and one of the responses I get are from those wondering about when we're going to start to see community nodes. Can you shine some light as to when we might expect to see this next phase in the path to decentralization?
I think it's going to be some time. I know that we keep saying it's going to be, a quarter or two or three or whatever it is. We've talked about community nodes for a long time now. It's not that the priority isn't there, or let me say it a different way. It's not the case that we don't care about community nodes. We obviously do. It's on the roadmap. It has been on the roadmap from the very beginning. We consider it a critical part of the overarching ecosystem and the way in which Hedera is going to scale, and an opportunity for those that are ultimately running the community nodes to participate in the monetization of Hedera, what it is to monetize the Hedera ecosystem and platform. All of those things are important. What's happened is that other things have also been important, and with limited resources, you end up having to make decisions about what to build next. And so, it's not entirely subjective, but there is a degree of subjectivity into what those things might be and are. But we've added a lot of features that were never part of the original white paper. If you go back and look at what's in the white paper and everything that we have today, you'll see that there's a superset of features that were not necessarily envisioned back then. But it's also the case that the community nodes are core, and it's not the case. I don't want to mislead anyone. It's not the case that the features that are required to enable community nodes aren't being worked on. They are. The work that has to happen to finish or to enable the community nodes to get across that line hasn't stopped. It continues to this day, but there's a lot of other work that has been added on top of that slowed things down. So when is it going to happen? That's the real question, right? It's probably later in 2024, but we'll have to wait and see. And and hopefully when the community sees everything else that we're doing and all the stuff that gets rolled out in support of a lot of what the work that Shayne is doing, and the market demand, the market pool for certain features to enable those use cases, the hope is that the community agrees those are important too, and they understand why the work that's being done is being done.
And I think we're going to get into, what you do with those limited resources and how you decide to go in which directions here in a little bit later. But I want to give you a break. We'll go to Shayne. Shayne, what is one misunderstanding about Hedera that you would like to clear up? This can be from the perspective of the Hedera community, the broader crypto community, enterprises, or even institutional investors, whichever direction you'd like to take it in.
That Atma.io is the only use case live on the network.
Right.
So we have a lot, and let me talk some numbers from a revenue perspective. So today, 99.6% of the transactions have been HCS. You mentioned this prior to the last two questions to Mance. Only 83% of network revenue are HCS. So that means the other 17% are coming from smart contracts and HTS. So let me give you some other numbers. Last year, the network did $328,000 in revenue, in transaction fees. We are on track this year, and I was hoping to have the exact number right now, but we're on track this year to do almost $4 million in network transaction fees. So that's 10x growth over a year's time, with the mix shift from HCS to HTS starting to really take shape. We have a couple of other use cases that have gone live in the last couple of weeks that are HTS related. We announced one today with Fresh Supply Company. Prior to that, Atma also with their HTS transactions at, I think, announced at COP28. And the list goes on. Zenny Travel, company you may have never heard of, but are going to add a significant amount of user accounts to the network. I think we've seen user account growth over the last week or two really start to take shape. And so that's something that I think the community talks about a lot. I think we like to talk about it a lot. Hey, look at the transactions. And we are more than a single use case. And, it's a testament to this community who have introduced us to a lot of projects. It's a testament to the projects for building. And you're going to continue to see that accelerate going into next year.
Yeah, and it's Sachin, right? Zenny
Yep.
is Sachin's company?
Yep, that's right.
And I've noticed doing the network analysis week in and week out, I'm starting to see them towards the top of those HTS tokens with those X-Bucks. So I'm really looking forward to what they have coming.
Yep.
Mance, another topic that gets a lot of attention and we see a lot of questions about is the Hedera Governing Council. We've seen only 2 announced this year with Dell and Kafra. With a full council to maintain stasis, you would expect about 6 council members to be announced annually. Is the council being more strategic with the timing of their announcements to get more impact? We've heard many people in the space, some of them are very knowledgeable, talk about how we have a deep pipeline. So why has the pace slowed?
Well, look, of course I anticipated this question, right? And so in anticipation of this question, I actually did something I've not done before. I went to one of the co-chairs of the membership committee, a guy named Bill Miller, and I asked him a variant of this. It's the same question, just a variation of the words. And if you'll permit me, I'm going to pretty much read his response. I have a response from Bill Miller, the chair, one of the co-chairs of the membership committee. And so I asked Bill, what do you think about this question? He says, Hedera has been maturing. Slowing the rate of new council member additions provided the council with an opportunity to solidify council organizations and operations. The process for becoming a council member has become much more involved as Hedera has matured, and new council members can be expected to already have developed or will be actively developing significant new use cases. The rate of adding members may have slowed for a time, but the maturity of the council has benefited, and the quality of prospective members in the pipeline is amazing. So that was him in a nutshell. That was his answer in a nutshell. Of course, I've seen it. I'm not running the committee, but we're observers to the committee, and we see what's going on. I'll attest to all that he said. And it is the case that the council, as a council, this year has matured in a way that is healthy, and I'm proud of. And that only happens with time. You can't rush that. So there was a time when the council was young and we were helping to shepherd the council along in its job of providing the oversight that's needed. Me and Lehman and the team have been out of Hedera now for more than 18 months into Swirlds Labs. We took a step back intentionally. We took a step back to give the space for the council to sort of then step up and fill in the gaps that we left behind. It was a leap of faith, when we did it, it was a leap of faith, but it was the right move. We're now seeing the fruit of that in the maturity of the council and the way that they provide the governance. And Bill's right. Now, would I have welcomed another 3 or 4 or 5 council members this year? Sure, everyone would. But I think if you tighten the standards like they have, and you have the pipeline that we have, it will lead to goodness. And I'm expecting that in 2024, more than 2. I'm expecting significantly more than 2 in 2024. And I think that the quality of those that are joining the council in terms of what they're bringing to the ecosystem when they join is going substantially up. So I view it all as goodness.
All right. Sounds bright already. Shayne, I'm going to go straight to a community question with this next one, and it comes from the man himself, Coinman, the H-Barbarian, who asks, what can be done to ensure Hedera attracts similar levels of mindshare to the Ethereums and the Solanas of this world?
It's a great question, because I think, Ethereum, it was one of the first. And so I think that they benefited from that and the innovation that Vitalik had really had around Ethereum. Solana, they were backed by a lot of the tier 1 VCs that really helped promote Solana. Solana really went through some tough times over the course of the last 12 months, right? With, their solution going down, they tried to launch the phone, et cetera. They really rebounded. in a good way, and congratulations to them. I think for us, we've got to continue to have these projects. We've got to continue to amplify our voice. I think you're going to see that in 2024 as we continue to put more wood behind the arrow with real world use cases solving real problems. And I think that, one of the areas that we're starting to see is, the institutional side. A lot of people in the community talk about retail and retail. Well, guess what? There's a lot of institutional demand, and the number of conversations we're in with some of the largest institutions in the world, honestly, many of them hadn't heard about Hedera, or if they did, it was because they heard of a council member joining Hedera. And so we're spending time with them, whether it's stablecoin projects, settlement projects, and the like, that are really, really important. And these are things that, when you think about bringing together TradFi and ReFi and DeFi all in one, we are a great chain to be able to do that on. And, we didn't focus on that early from a foundation perspective. We were really focused on having projects building on the network as the team, Swirls Labs, Hedera's, former engineering side, was really hardening a lot of the capabilities around EVM compatibility and now EVM equivalents, as an example, smart contracts 2.0, those things. And then we had to really focus a lot on, the ons and off ramps that we really didn't have. Remember, until this last year, we didn't have the support of Coinbase. So there was a lot still left to build out that I would consider to be, blocking and tackling. That we've done that, and now it's time to truly put our foot on the gas. And you're going to see that some interesting use cases coming in 2024 that we are incredibly, incredibly excited about.
Now, when people think about institutions, of course, they're thinking about them potentially investing. So when you have these conversations, are you talking about direct investment? Are they talking about investing in ecosystem things that are being built on Hedera? Or is it the products? We're hearing an awful lot about products being built on Hedera or on for these different networks, yeah, ETFs and so forth. So what kind of conversations are you having along those lines?
We're not having investor conversations. So we're not seeking investment from them to say, hey, invest in us. We're having conversations around them building on Hedera. And what is it? Whether it's Stablecoin Studio, right? They want to build a stablecoin. Why wouldn't you do it on us? For a lot of reasons. Prior to, I would say, the last 3 months, where we talked a lot about transaction fees and the fees being fixed and denominated to the dollar, a lot of enterprises didn't really care about that, but financial institutions care a lot about that, right? Because when they talk about, a single basis point, right, which is, 100 basis points, which is 1%, those things really, really matter when you're talking about billions of transactions. And so now you're starting to talk transaction fees, and to the point that you made early on around HTS being 1/1000th of a penny and, HTS being 1/10 of a penny. Wow, wait a second. So now I can, as a large financial institution who's thinking about building on a layer one, they understand the economics, and that's what's compelling. And so we have a lot of conversation going now. They're kicking the tires. They're really trying to understand, why haven't I heard about Hedera before? Honestly, and many of them have, but some of them haven't, and it's because we haven't for a lot of reasons, decentralization and all of the grayness around tokens in general. We just wanted to be thoughtful. And so now there's real use cases that these organizations are looking at, and we are candidly the perfect chain for them to take a look at. And that's why I think we're getting a lot of attention.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you, Mance, or Shayne, whichever one wants to answer. Now, we've seen networks out there have fees at zero. And like you guys have said in the past, you can't get something for nothing. And then we have ones with very low fees. I think the fixed fees are very important, but I've talked a lot in the past about how the most important thing is how efficient the network is. That gives you the free range to allow you to change those fees depending on market conditions. But how do you set those fees, and why not set them lower or higher? How do you go about that thought process?
Well, I can talk to how we did it initially. It's not necessarily the way it would be done going forward. There's a whole committee involved in setting all of that. But initially, we actually literally looked at every API call and the resources that it would use, depending on whatever that API call was, the hard costs, if you will, for executing that API call, and calculating what that cost. So we understood the floor of the costs for the API call. And then we understood, well, the second phase of that, or next step in that process, was to take a look at what the market was paying. Look at the other L1s, for example, out there that had something similar in terms of the API calls for their platforms and what they were charging for those API calls. And then, given those two things, you can, to your point, you understand how much margin you have between your hard costs, your really cost of goods, and what the market will pay. And then you get some idea of what you need to do to be the cost leader, if it's appropriate to be the cost leader. And it's not always appropriate to be the cost leader, right? You may not want to be the cost leader. So there are a lot of variables that go into it, but we went through that type of exercise early on. And in some cases, we charged less than the hard costs because we thought it was the right thing to do at the time. It's almost like give the turkey away for free, because that the customers are going to come and buy all of the side dishes that go along with it for your Thanksgiving meal. So it's not a straightforward calculus, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of thought that goes into that. Now there is a committee, the Coin Committee, that is involved in helping to make those decisions, and there are requests for things like demand supply studies. So what is the elasticity of demand, rather, is what I'm thinking. What's the elasticity of demand as a function of price? There's a science behind it, and that's a long-winded way of saying it's not simple. And but there are a lot of smart people that are watching it.
Fair enough. So, Mance, I have another direct community question for you, and it comes from Marshall, who asks, what are the biggest behind-the-scenes setbacks that you can share? And I'll add, how do you feel about Hedera's response?
That I can share. So,
or it could be something, you can take it in the direction of something that is publicly known and what Hedera's response was and how you feel about that.
The truth is, there are not a lot of setbacks. And let me explain. There are the occasional times when we've worked hard on a given deal or trying to bring a certain member to the council. Really, those are the two, right? There's three things, I guess. Council membership, deals, those are related, increasingly related, but not as much way back when. And then there's code and being able to get the code delivered on time. Those are like the three pillars, if you want to think of it that way. And there have been times when we worked hard on getting a deal done and the deal didn't move forward for some reason. Months will go into trying to close a deal with a counterparty that we believe would be fantastic for the ecosystem. And then it doesn't close. But the interesting thing is, when we are in those types of competition, it's not the case that we're losing to the other L1s. It's not the case that we've been in deals where we competed and then we lost. What has happened is that we've competed and the counterparty, whomever it is across the table from us, has slowed down their progress, or they've made decisions that they're going to wait and see how the market evolves and matures. I won't go into something specific by name, but what I will tell you is that we were in just such a deal a couple years ago, back when Facebook Libra was a thing, right? Back when Libra was a big deal. And that whole episode, when Facebook was getting into the game, really prompted some big players to say, okay, we've got to move. And we were in some discussions that were fantastic discussions, right? And I think that they were leading to something that would have accelerated the entire industry forward, and certainly Hedera. And then things fell apart for Libra and Facebook. They had to go before Congress, and they made some promises to Congress and say, we're not going to move forward until all these regulators approve that. Probably not a smart, promise to make. and it ultimately killed the whole thing. And just as much as that Facebook Libra episode, I think, could have driven the market forward, the fact that they fell on their face held the market back. And so, yeah, we've seen examples where you call it a setback or whatever, but it's not the case that we lost. And most of the time, I view the world as just here are the milestones that we need to achieve. Here's the list. Now let's go check a bunch of boxes, and we work hard until the boxes get checked, and you just don't stop until they are checked, right? And they're not setbacks. They just, sometimes they take longer to deliver than you like. Sometimes you deliver more quickly than you like. But it's not a case where I see us losing things and it causes me to think, oh man, that's painful. That hurt, right? I don't have that experience.
Let me comment on that, Brandon, from the HBAR Foundation's perspective. We were in a deal, negotiating a deal with one of the largest sports franchises in the world, and I'll leave that there. But it was also, we were really close, and it was at the beginning of the crypto winter. So they got spooked, right? And now all of a sudden they started looking at the Washington Nationals deal that they did with Terra Luna. They started looking at the Algorand deal with FIFA. And they said, we don't want to be one of those folks. And then you had the FTX collapse. So not because we lost it. In fact, we had actually won this deal. And it was, again, it was going to be amazing for Hedera. And so that's the thing I think that is most frustrating is when you and your team work so hard to get this close. And we know that it's going to do a significant amount of create a significant amount of value, both from what they were going to build on the network, along with, just the sheer marketing and association that we would have, right? It's something that I said to someone the other day. Most of our, when we get covered, most of it is within the crypto rag, right? They will cover us in CoinDesk or Cointelegraph or whatever. We need to get into the mainstream of being able to be covered in, the media of non-crypto, and I think there's some things that we've got going that we're going to see that in 2024, and it's certainly a target for us. It's certainly a target for us to be, it'd be great for us to be in the Financial Times. It would be great for us to be, in the Wall Street Journal or in, name your media outlet. And so we know that we need to continue to elevate it. We're partnering with the Swirls Labs. We're partnering with others, but unfortunately, due to industry circumstances, which we hope, are turning around, that we have a lot of opportunity going into 2024.
Well covered. Now, Mance, I want to circle back to something that you talked about before. Of course, there are limited resources available to build our ecosystem and the infrastructure. How is the balance struck at Swirls Labs between the needs of the network and that ecosystem and the resources available?
It is the case that we look at the use cases that are coming to prominence, right? And we do that by collecting information from a wide variety of sources, including, in large part, including THF, Shayne and team, as well as some of the other sort of organizations that have been funded by Hedera as well. And then we have, as maybe you and a lot of the viewers know, we have a whole team of what we call developer advocates that are market facing. So we collect information from them, and we have a marketing team that is also doing analysis and research. And why do we do that? We do that because ultimately we do have scarce resources and we can't build everything, and we have to make some strategic decisions. And when I say we, I don't want to give the impression that it's Swirls Labs unilaterally deciding what to build. We take all of that information, and it's part of the ecosystem to include the council members. The council members review it alongside us, and we look at the HIPs that are created, requesting various features to be delivered, and we basically rank order it. We say, okay, we see that there is a major play here for, say, loyalty and rewards in gaming. Or there's a major play for Hedera as an ecosystem in the ESG category. And then there's a major play in stablecoins with the financial sector. And then we look at what is missing in terms of the infrastructure, but whether it's features that we've developed or it's partners that we need to integrate with, what's missing in order to sort of fully develop those use case categories so that the category as a category can go build its own ecosystem around Hedera. And then we prioritize the work. That's it. And ultimately, what we care about is TPS and revenue into the network, right? That's we have to become sustainable. We want to be sustainable in as short amount of time as possible. We have plenty of runway, of course, with the Hedera Treasury there to achieve sustainability first, but ultimately you have to be sustainable. And so we look at it all through that lens, all of those opportunities through that lens, and we narrow it down to a very few. And then within those few, we narrow it down further, and then we place our bets and we go build. And we do it alongside sister organizations like THF that is out there closing deals. And that's sort of the process.
And I think that's a good segue. This is one that I certainly should ask you as well, Shayne. What are your thoughts on balancing, resources available and what the needs of the network are?
So when we think about, and this is from the beginning, from when we started the foundation, we knew that, our source of funding, we weren't going and raising, private money. And we knew that we needed to be very efficient in how we think about resourcing. And so we oftentimes hire what I will call, and this is a baseball analogy, a utility fielder, someone who can do multiple things, but has a primary role. And that's allowed us to be able to flex. The other thing is in the way that we organized. So if you recall, when we organized the foundation, it wasn't just we've got this lump of treasury, let's put it to work, however we choose. No, what we did was we wanted to align ourselves by specific areas within the market that we needed to mature, that we needed to grow, right? That's why we had originally the Crypto Economy Fund, what we called the Metaverse Fund, which has now become the Consumer Loyalty and Engagement Fund, the Sustainable Impact Fund, and then Payments and FinTech. What we didn't realize at the time was this idea of tokenization goes across all, right? And so we needed to really focus our resources and be able to have people that can do many things. So the person that was heading up our Crypto Economy Fund, she is now our head of strategy, Elaine Song. And then we've grown someone from within the organization that is now taking over the Crypto Economy Fund and continuing to focus on the building of on-ramps and off-ramps, exchanges, wallets, and the like. And we're doing that all throughout so that we make sure that as we spend a dollar, that dollar goes a very long way. And lastly, we're making sure we're good stewards of HBAR. I've said it multiple times. We're not just giving projects money. We are typically giving them 10 to 20% of HBAR of their project request up front and the remainder in milestones. So that's making sure that we're not putting good money after bad if the project's not successful. And so those are the ways that we've really tried to be efficient and thoughtful around spending the treasury that we've been blessed with from Hedera.
Fair enough. Now, I'm going to give this one to both of you as well. What's the one area of improvement? What's the one gap you see that you would like to see us improve in the next year? And Shayne, I'll go back to you on this.
Filling the council seats. I think today we have 29 announced council members, and I'd like to see us get the other 10. Mance talked about the richness of the existing pipeline. It's there. And I think that given the maturity of the process and making sure that they're building on the network, and many of them are building even before they're considered council, it's taken a little bit longer, but I am very hopeful that we'll fill out the other 10 spots. And I think that's important for network sustainability.
And just to be clear, you're saying you think we could fill out the next 10 spots within the next year, within 2024?
I am hopeful. I'm not suggesting that we will, but I am hopeful. We certainly have a pipeline to do that, but the process needs to work. The process will work. So I'm not, this is no alpha. I'm not suggesting that we're going to, but I will say that the pipeline is very rich, and I'd like to see us be able to be in a position to have the next 10 over the next 12 months.
It's something I would like to see. And Mance, what are your thoughts? What are some of the gaps and improvements you want to see in 2024?
Well, so we open sourced the software some time ago. Honestly, I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it's been a long time that now the code base itself is is open source Apache 2. And what we haven't done is built out a governance model for the open source software that includes the ecosystem. That's going to happen, right? We're actively working on that now. We're working alongside Andrew Aiken, the Chief Open Source Officer at Hedera. And I think that in 2024, there is going to be a very robust open source project that includes a lot of the community members that want to participate, right? And want to contribute code directly to the project. So I think that'll be healthy for the ecosystem. It's been a long time coming, and I'm excited to see how that unfolds in the coming quarters.
All right, I love it. Now let's end on a happy note. Let's end on a good note. I'd like to know what you're most excited about for 2024, and Shayne, we'll start with you.
I'm most excited about some of the deals that we're working on in the pipeline that I think will thrust us onto the world stage, honestly. And I think that is, to me, early on, 2.5 years ago, myself, co-founder, David Creamer, our COO, and at the time our CFO, we got in a room and we said, what is it that we need to do responsibly? And we had this idea of a cornerstone deal. And we didn't necessarily know what that meant, but it was something that we have been really focused on and targeting. And knock on wood, 2024 will be the year that we find that cornerstone deal that will elevate us into the conversation around blockchain and how it's going to solve both consumer and enterprise challenges. That's what I'm excited about. I think it's been fun working on these opportunities, and I want to continue to spend our time there.
And Shayne, is this something that you need to find, or do you think you're already working on some projects, on some deals that could act as that cornerstone project?
Yeah, we're already working on some projects. And so which one is going to come to fruition first, we're not sure. But we're working hard on it. And so we've identified a few that could be that cornerstone deal for us. But again, we want to do it right. We want it to be a win-win. And so we're trying to do the right things and making sure that the use case is compelling. People are willing to spend money transacting on it. And so, that's what I think we're focused on. That's what I'm excited about.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And Mance, what about you? What are you most excited about for 2024?
Well, look, I think that Worlds Labs is going to morph again into its next phase of life. So for the past 18 months, Worlds Labs has simply, well, I shouldn't say simply, exclusively worked for Hedera by contract to continue the work that had been previously done inside of Hedera. All of that is going to continue. It has to continue. But it's also the case that Swirls Labs wants to use the network like all the other members of the community use the network for all the reasons that we promote its use, and they use it. We're going to be peers in that regard, and we're going to use the network to build other products and services and go to market with those. And so I think that will happen next year. I mean, there's a lot in the works already. Nothing I'm going to announce today, but that's what is exciting me about 2024.
I absolutely love it. Gentlemen, it is always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on today, and here's to a successful and bright 2024 for the Hedera Network.
Here. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.